Hello guys, Haunted May 13 here, back with another prediction video, this time for UFC Fight Night, Burns versus Morales. Now this is a really big one. For an Apex card, this might be like the WrestleMania of Apex cards. Moving on to fight number 1 on the main card. Julian Erosa versus, how do you get his first name? Melquisil Costa. Now I like to call this guy Purple Hair because it's a wild hairstyle. I describe this guy as like Charles Oliveira on crack. He doesn't have the same Muay Thai technique, but he throws a lot of punches. Now who is he fighting here? A guy who likes to finish in the first round, a kill or be killed guy in Julian Erosa. This has all the makings of fight of the night. I can see why they've put this on the main card, even though Costa's not the biggest name at this point, but he is fighting Julian Erosa, who's a legend at this point. Fought some great fighters. Paddy Pimblett on the regional scene, one of his biggest, probably his biggest fight he's ever had, to be honest. And it was on the regional scene. So he's going to fight a guy here who's a young prospect, just like in that Paddy Pimblett fight back in 2016. The difference here is that I feel like Costa just doesn't have any X factor. He's just sloppy, but he likes to throw, so he can be dangerous. Oliveira does the same thing, but he's got the technique and he's got the background of Muay Thai where he can be a bit more close together with his shots, so he has got a bit of method in his madness. I feel like Costa's going to get finished here by Erosa simply because his technique's just not quite as good. I can see it ending early. I think it's going to be one of the two early fights, as we'll get to the main event later. No spoilers. I think he's just going to get the early finish to Erosa for the third time in a row, and he's going to join the legendary Sam Corpse Guard Pattinson as the only fighter in the UFC to get 3 first round finishes in a row in the lower divisions. And I think it's going to be a really stellar Julian Erosa first round killer be killed performance, and he's going to get the kill. I feel he's going to do it by landing some kind of crazy flying knee. I know that's a bit of a niche pick, but I can just really see Costa going in for like a flurry and then switching for the takedown, switching levels and just getting caught, similar to the bomb-themed Terence McKinney fight, because he's just wild at this point, Costa, from what I've seen. I think he's going to need to mature to get anywhere in the divisions. I think it could be a similar story to an Oliveira, where when he picks up some more experience, he can be a big player. I think he's going to get finished here by Erosa, because Erosa does tend to finish these prospects. He did it with Rodriguez, and he also did it with Ramos. I can't remember his name, Ramos or something. I can't remember his name. He was one of those Mexican American dudes, let's just say, one of those guys who tends to go over the border. And I feel like he's going to do the same thing here to this guy, who, let's face it, probably does have Mexican heritage. Moving on, fight number 2 on the main card, the hardest names I've ever had to predict in a row in a fight. Dustin Stoltzfus versus the resulting Ruzaboyev. Now Ruzaboyev is an absolute freak. He's a 6'5" giant at middleweight, and his opponent, Stoltzfus, is a 5'11" midget at middleweight. So who do we pick here? Now, you may think pick the Goliath in this fight, but the Goliath is actually shit, in my opinion. He's got no technique. He kind of fights like, do you remember when Volkov actually used to be shit? Before the Swolkov, like the new Volkov? Do you remember that old version of Volkov? That's what I see in this guy. He's just got no kind of movement. He's stationary. He throws kind of very wild swinging shots. He doesn't tend to put much emphasis on switching up his attacks. He just tends to throw haymakers, which you can get away as a fat heavyweight. But unfortunately, the 6'5" guy isn't a heavyweight. He's at middleweight, and he's fighting with that style. And he's fighting a guy in Stoltzfus who does have the lower centre of gravity, does have a grappling background, and does actually have a bit of speed for a middleweight. He's sloppy, but he has speed with his punches. He tends to not throw, just like Ruzaboyev, he tends to not throw them very cleanly. Like, he's not very tucked in with his shots, but he does throw pretty fast shots. You know, he throws shots like Mackenzie Dern, which may be a really weird comparison, but you'll see it when you watch this fight. He kind of like doesn't look like he's ever had a boxing class, but still come at you on weird angles at speed, so they can catch you out at a lower level, which I believe Ruzaboyev is at. So I think he's actually going to get the win here. I think it's going to be first decision on this card. I think he's going to probably land some good shots in the early rounds and then probably going to switch to the wrestling because he's got that background, and he's just going to get a pretty dominant decision here. I just think Ruzaboyev's low level. I think he's one of the worst of them kind of Eastern fighters, to be honest with you. I've never seen someone from that region be as bad technically, because they're very technical fighters, them kind of guys, and he isn't whatsoever. I think he's going to get beaten up here. He's not going to get finished because I think he's tough, but he's just not going to get any luck in this. He's going to get pretty dominantly pretty dominantly beaten, and I think he's probably going to get a lot of damage given to him in the later rounds because he's just going to gas out after being the bigger guy, but also being the guy who's getting wrestled and having to use his energy to try and get up, because I feel like Stoltzfus can just keep control, not do anything too crazy, and he'll pretty easily keep him down. And Stoltzfus won't have to make much effort to keep the big giant who's quite clumsy and quite hard to get up at that height, you know, especially at middleweight when you're weight drained. It's going to be a really draining fight, and I just think towards the end he's going to get pretty badly beaten, but he'll survive just because of his toughness, which he has shown. So I think it's going to be a Dustin Stoltzfus decision. Moving on, fight number 3 on the main card, Sodiq Yusuff versus Maran Santos. This is probably the highest level fight so far on the card. Yusuff is very technical, Santos is very technical, but I do think that he's got kind of a bit of a, for want of a better word, a bit of a tough guy kind of style where he just relies a lot on his toughness, where even though these two are both high level, Santos is the kind of guy who will take an extra shot to land one, whereas Sodiq Yusuff is quite boring and he'll just be so technical that he doesn't want to take that because he feels like if he's took a shot, he's failing. He's one of these perfectionist guys who just feels like he wants every shot to miss, and if he lands one and he gets hit with one, he's gonna like get frustrated and feel like he's failed. Whereas I feel like Santos is more of the guy who's gonna just look for that win and that kill. So I feel like if there's any finishing potential in this fight, it is on the side of Maran Santos. But Yusuff is the better technical striker. But they're both high level, they're both well rounded. So I would say this is the fight of the main card as far as technical standpoint. I don't think it's going to be the fight of the night. I think that's going to probably be the first fight. But I feel like it's going to be a really technical, enjoyable fight for a hardcore. Really good way to go into the next fight, which is, in my opinion, one of the highest stakes fights on the card apart from the main event. But I feel like this one's going to be the most technical. I feel like if I had to pick a winner, it'd be Santos, because I always go for finishing potential when two fighters are both well rounded. I feel like the finishing potential is the X factor. I think that Yusuff is the more well schooled striker. I feel like Santos is the more dangerous, and I feel like he couldn't get the finish in the second round here, because I feel like Yusuff is going to start by just keeping his distance and landing cleaner shots. But I think in the second round, the frustration's going to set in when he sees that Santos is just still coming forward. He's probably going to try and switch things up, and that's when he's going to get caught with a left hook, which I've seen Santos drop people with in the past. I feel like once Yusuff gets caught with that, similar to his Arnold Allen fight back in the day when he got dropped similarly, I feel like he's going to not be able to withhold any of the storm coming at him, because I feel like Santos, unlike an Arnold Allen, is going to be having that killer instinct. That's something that's held an Arnold Allen back in the past, and I feel like if Arnold had that, he'd have got the title shot quicker. Sorry, I'm ranting, I'm a big Arnie fan, but I feel like Santos has got that finishing instinct. I feel like he's going to land that left hook. He's probably not going to really need too much follow-up, because I feel like he's a bit chinny, Yusuff. I mean, you're getting dropped by Arnold Allen, so he's probably going to get, I mean, even Dan Hooker didn't after getting hit with about the kitchen sink. So he's going to get dropped, I feel like, and then it's just going to be a couple of hammer fists, and that's going to be a good night. And that'll be an impressive win for Santos, but he is really dangerous, and I feel like he's the guy to finish a Sodiq Yusuff, who is kind of not coming off much momentum of recent time, and he's a bit inactive. and rusty. And the Apex is just going to be a bit of a, I think it's going to be a bit of a come down for Yusuf, who has been in some big cards, pay-per-views in the past. Santos hasn't experienced that yet. He's hungry for it, and I feel like he's going to rise to the occasion and be more excited for this, up for it, and he's going to get that finish in the second, and he's going to put his stamp on this division. Moving on, fight number four, sorry, on the main card. Paul Craig versus Rodolfo Bellato. I've covered all of Bellato's fights. He's a new guy. I think he's decent, but he's facing Paul Craig, the legend here, the most dangerous guy on the ground in the UFC, the biggest victim in the UFC. He is a great ground guy, but he's also one of the most hilarious fighters to watch, because he literally emotes when he's having like the boringest fight of all time, like he did against Johnny Walker before getting embarrassingly finished, like he did against Bo Nickel. I love watching that. I find it pretty memeable. And it's very rare Johnny Walker is the least memeable guy in a fight. Anthony Smith and Paul Craig are the only two guys who've ever been able to do that. I feel like that'd been my dream fight, actually. Sorry, I'm still recovering from the legend of Anthony Smith retirement. I feel like Paul Craig might actually get the win here. I feel like he's fighting like the lower level of prospect than Bo Nickel. He couldn't quite get it done against Bo, but I feel like this is going to be the fight that Paul Craig kind of stops the hype train. It just seems like that kind of fight. I feel like Bellato's just too basic, man. I just feel like he's like the basic, like, you know when you get the UFC like create a character mode and you like get the basic like what they call them, like the template. He literally is the template. He's like the opposite of Mizuquel Costa. He's like the most basic guy ever, and he just has that basic skill set to go with it. And Paul Craig does have that X factor in his ground game, and he also looked decent in his striking in that Bo Nickel fight. And a Paul Craig not coming off a vicious knockout against a Johnny Walker is a dangerous thing for me, because I feel like Paul Craig is a very confidence based fighter, and he doesn't like to throw shots usually if he's coming off some kind of finish, which he often does because he gets finished very often. But in his last fight, he did last the 3 rounds, and it was on a Madison Square Garden event. So fighting on the Apex, I just feel like it's going to be the most comfortable Paul Craig we've seen in a while, because he has been on pay-per-view cards in those finish defeats, like the Johnny Walker fight and the Bo Nickel fight. And also even his best performance of recent times against the fat guy in the middleweight division who always seems to be unranked. That'll be, you know I'm talking about, the UFC London grappler who he just dominated on the floor. One of my favourite performances from Paul Craig. Can't remember his name, he's just a fat middleweight, who cares? But that was a good performance from Craig, and what did we see there? He was fighting a guy who was a grappling specialist. What's he fighting here? A guy who has no striking and is also a grappler at heart, really, even though I'd say he has no real threat in any division, the area of MMA. And I feel like he's going to get finished here very early. I feel like Paul Craig's going to show that ground game that has made him, I wouldn't say famous, because he's not, no one cares about him, but he's made him lethal in the sport. You can't deny that. He's beat people like Ankalaev, he's beat people like Jamal Hill, so I mean he's dangerous, even though it's hard to call a guy dangerous who just stands there and throws like a jab and then lays on his back like he's about to get ramrodded. But yeah, I feel like he's going to get the win here. I feel like he's going to probably get it by a fence kind of takedown situation where he just uses his striking against the fence, which is limited, but he can use it to get the level change, and then I just feel like he'll drag him to the ground, and I can see him randomly getting some kind of leg lock, because I've noticed Bellato does have very long legs and he tends to look a bit lost when he's on the ground. He's not a fast scrambler, and I feel like he could get caught in something when he gets up in a real weird like exchange on the ground possibly. So that's my like niche pick of the fight card. I think he's going to get a leg lock finish, key lock for a. I'd say that's probably going to be the most likely scenario. I can see Paul Craig just landing a great submission in this fight and looking like the old Paul Craig who we like to see do stuff where we'd just not expect it. I feel like it's going to be one of those crazy submissions where it's in a transition that we didn't expect. And I feel like when he's facing a long leg guy like this, which I hate saying because it sounds sus, I feel like he can get that. and the highlight reel, because the only type of highlight reel Paul Craig gets is off his back. Ask his fell any girl who's ever been with. Anyway, the main event of the night. Bye-bye. Paul Craig. Gilbert Burns, he's kind of been on the downward skid. He lost to JDM. He's also lost to Bilal Muhammad, but he has been rejuvenated recently. He's kind of had a bit of a upswing in his career outside the cage with the Moicano podcast, but now he's stepping away from that and he's trying to really get himself together and focus on rejuvenating his career as well as his outside activities. I feel like this one against Morales is one of those where it's just gonna, either way it's gonna be definitive. It's either going to be Morales just outstriking Gilbert, making him look old and slow in there, or Morales is going to get drowned by Gilbert's superior grappling and he's just more all well-rounded game. Morales likes to throw these like unorthodox shots. You know, he finished Magny, he started that sequence with a spinning elbow, so he's got a lot of tools in there. But I feel like someone like Gilbert Burns has seen it all and he's really going to be ready for that. And he's going to use a lot of feints. He's going to try and make Morales second guess himself. He's going to try and be the aggressor because Gilbert always tries to be aggressive in there. We saw that with one of my first prediction videos, actually, the Sean Brady fight. He always goes for it. He looked slow and old in that fight. Yeah, but at the same time, he also was facing someone who could match him in the grappling, and that's going to really take away that kind of edge that Gilbert has in a lot of his fights. So, as we saw in his Masvidal performance where he faced an older guy, he was facing a young guy in the Brady fight and a great grappler. This fight reminds me more of like one of those performances where we've seen Gilbert look good, you know, against the dangerous strikers. You know, even his fight against Kamaru Usman wasn't really the best striker, but he tried to strike with him in that round and he got knocked down in that fight, which people forget twice. People seem to not talk about that a lot and they call Usman one of the goats. He's not, he's overrated. But I feel like in this fight, Gilbert could possibly fraud check Morales, and that'd be the second one in the space of a month with the Bo Nickel one recently. And I picked RDR in that fight. So am I going to do the same thing here and pick against the young prospect? The answer is no. I'm going to have to go Morales. I just think Burns, even though he's going to look better in this fight than he has recently, I think it's not going to be enough. And he's just going to get blown away, basically. I think that's the only way this fight's going to go if it's Morales win. I just think he's going to blow Gilbert out of the water and possibly end his career at the apex. How sad is that? He probably ain't even going to get a highlight package video, but I can see the gloves being put down for Gilbert. I think he's going to get finished in the first. I think it's going to be a blow-away type of massacre performance. It's going to probably make Gilbert look every bit his age of 38, and he's going to get probably finished with severe ground and pound after getting caught with an uppercut, because Morales tends to throw a lot of jabs and then he tends to step in with that uppercut, and I've seen him do that in a few of his previous fights, and if he doesn't get lucky with that, he'll grab you in the clinch and he'll try and look for some knees and then possibly split away to get one of those elbows landed. So I think he's going to land the uppercut here just because he's facing probably someone who's even slower at this point than a Neil Magny, unfortunately. And I think he's just going to get uppercut, put down and then ground and pounded to the finish. Round 1 KO for our friend. Moving on to fight number 1 on the main card. Julian Erosa versus, how do you get his first name? Melquisil Costa. Now I like to call this guy Purple Hair.